All right, everybody. Hello, I am Kelsa Dickey, financial coach and founder of Fiscal Fitness Phoenix, where we help fitness enthusiasts and personal trainers get in shape financially too. I am also the founder of Financial Coach Academy, a training program specifically for financial coaches. We also host events throughout the year and retreats and have all sorts of fun things that we do because I love financial coaching. And I hope today's training helps you fall in love with coaching even more too. You can find more training such as this at financialcoachacademy.com. And if you are on our email list, you will receive a copy of this recording as long as you are on the list. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat. If you are catching the replay, go ahead and make sure you subscribe because we do send out other trainings and stuff through email as well. So it's financialcoachacademy.com/subscribe. Really easy to get that, but you'll probably want to have some paper handy, pen, or if you take notes in a Google Doc or something, hopefully you'll find a lot of reasons to take notes today. And I was sharing with everybody before I hit record that I feel very passionate about the topic today, which is helping our clients to get out of debt and how do we coach our clients through that process. And I want to start by saying that this process is definitely not how I started with coaching clients to get out of debt. And so there is zero shade, there is zero shame if the way you do it is different than this, okay? I know when I first started, if a client came to me and said they wanted to get out of debt, my process was something like, okay, get me your info. They would send me their debt info. Like I would give them exactly the breakdown of what I needed. So balances, interest rates, payment information, payment amount. And then I would put all that information into a debt snowball spreadsheet specifically. And then I would give it to them and I would say, see, this is what you do. This is the plan. This is how you do it, right? And it would probably take all of one session. And now the process that I'm going to show you can take a month, usually 4 sessions, and you'll see why in just a minute. And sometimes that process that I would use would work beautifully. It would be perfect. It's exactly what the client needed and they would get out of debt because of it, right? And then there are times where it wouldn't work. And along with the client, we would then go into brainstorming mode, right? We would make adjustments and we would tweak things and we would really try and focus on, well, what do we need to change in order for this to work better for you? And that is when I realized that there is not one way of getting out of debt that will work for every single one of our clients. And I know this next statement that I'm going to make might cause some conflict, but I think something that I realized really early on is that the debt snowball isn't the best way to get out of debt. It's simply the best way for some people to get out of debt. And that's when I decided to sort of change my process around. And instead of saying, here's your plan, and me sort of deciding what the best way was, and then if it worked, great. And if it didn't work, we would then sort of go into discovery mode at that stage. We would brainstorm, we would re-strategize and all of that and come up with a new plan. Instead of doing it in that order, what if I flip-flopped that? What if I did all of the discovery on the front end? What if I went into it with this question and this perspective of, I can't wait to discover which way is best for this client. I can't wait to find that out. I can't wait to help them figure that out, right? And not be bought into one particular way until I know so much more about them, right? So that's really what we do is we bring curiosity into the conversation first. We are not attached to one particular way. So that means we don't have to pivot later if we find it didn't work because chances are we're doing that legwork on the front end, okay? And that is really where I want to encourage you guys to really grow and learn from this place of curiosity. So the more I coach clients, the more clients that I coach, the more uniqueness I found in the world and the more uniqueness I was able to witness, the more creative I had to become on what would work and what didn't work. And I find that to be a really beautiful sort of journey of growth for all of us. And I want you to lean into that, right? And so I think this conversation today is around, instead of you figuring that out on the back end like I had to do, what if we just start that conversation today with like, entering the conversation with your clients from this perspective, okay? Of like, I don't know what way is best. Let's figure that out together, okay? So I am going to share the various steps in my process that simply work because it's what I believe to be true in a lot of ways, sort of like the way I view people, the way I view the world, the way I have conversations with my clients, and the way that I sort of choose to live my life. And I say that because the expectation is not that you agree with every single step that I'm going to show you today. I do not have that expectation. It's really about, can you find some elements of my process that could elevate your own process, right? There might be parts of today that you decide to discard, and that is absolutely okay. You may say, yeah, I don't really like that idea. Totally fine. I simply hope that you gain some new insights, some new ideas of how you can coach your clients on getting out of debt. So there are 3 key focuses that I want you to pay attention to inside of the process I'm going to teach you today. Okay. The first one is this idea that debt payoff is not the goal from coaching. Coaching does not end when debts are paid off. Okay. So if you've ever had a client where it's like, I don't know what to do after they pay off debt, or maybe the client seems as if that's like some end point for them in their coaching journey, then what we want to really work on in all of our conversations with clients, but I hope you're going to really experience that today, is helping them to create more of a lifelong perspective of financial growth really early on in their journey. So it's like this idea of like, how do we emphasize that getting out of debt is important, and it's also not the end all be all, right? Like there is so much more beyond that. And coaching and finances are a lifelong journey, right? Like once we do that, we are then on to the next step. And once we do that, we're on to the next stage. And then after that, like there's just so much more that we could be doing and achieving. And we actually want to be planting those seeds, beginning that shift in their perspective really early on in our conversation. So I hope you observe that today. The other thing, key focus with the conversation and the approach that I'm going to show you is that debt is a symptom. It is not the actual problem. So I think so many of us maybe know that to be true, but I want to really emphasize for you throughout this of like, how are we drawing attention to that? So here's why this is so important. You have to be careful of how you communicate that philosophy to a client, because if you were to say to a client, so you've actually got something else wrong with you, there's some other problem besides your debt that we need to address, right? Like that's kind of what we say in that like philosophy. Well, that approach can be so rude, intimidating, like discouraging to a person, right? So the idea is that what I'm going to show you, this approach helps them to get out of debt, but it also frees up their focus and our focus during our additional sessions, that while they're getting out of debt, we're actually able to do even more too, right? Like it actually frees that perspective up. And so I'm going to show that to you today, where it's like, hey, we do need to tackle this, and we want to be tackling so many other things at the exact same time. Okay. The other thing, the other key focus is something that I say all the time, which is, and I actually just did a post about it yesterday. If any of you follow me either on Instagram or on my personal profile, I shared this, and I literally said, like, I am so sick and tired of financial gurus who shame people into taking action on their money. And I say that, and yet I think that doesn't, I don't think people know what that means. Like, that's just not specific enough, right? It's just not clear enough of like, well, when are we using shame, and what's the alternative, and how do we flip that, right? And so the idea is to empower our clients to get out of debt for the right reasons and in all the right ways, not because they feel shamed into taking action, or it's done out of obligation. Okay. So, or because they need fixed, right? And so I think really what I want to emphasize today are these 3 things, which is, how do we empower our clients from a really positive place without shame? How do we help them to get out of debt while also focusing on so many other things, and sort of not putting all of their emphasis on the debt itself? And also, how do we help them see that there's so much more to coaching and what we can do and what they can do along their financial journey than just getting out of debt? Okay. Now, there is sort of this philosophy or this breakdown that we're going to use today. And it is the following. This actually comes from the medical world. So if I have any sort of like nurses or physical therapists or doctors or whatever, it is this idea of subjective, objective, assessment, and plan. Subjective, objective, assessment, and plan. Okay. And I can honestly say that I think my approach initially when I first started as a coach was really just the assessment and the plan. The assessment part is like, give me all your debts and I'm going to see them all together like in a nice, pretty list. And then I'm going to give you the plan to follow to get out of debt. Right. And we completely missed the subjective and objective parts of a conversation. So, but that's where we need to be starting. Right. So that is what we're going to tackle next. So the subjective part of this is, why does a client want to get out of debt? And I will literally ask a client this when we start this process. Okay. So I will say, so tell me, why do you want to get out of debt? And then I listen. And really what you want to do as a coach is listen for cues of shame or obligation or guilt or regret or like really negative things. Also things that are not positive. Right. And oftentimes what I have heard from so many people when I initially asked this question, because again, this is like the first question I ask, right? What you're also looking for and what you will most likely hear are the external drivers. It's something outside of them that makes them want to get out of debt. Okay. When really what we want to focus on, you guys, is helping them discover the internal driver. What is in it for them if they get out of debt? Why is their life going to be better? How will they feel about themselves? Because what they feel about themselves is so much more important and really the only thing that matters compared to like what someone else thinks of their debt or what someone else is telling them that they should think about their debt. Okay. So let's see. So that's really what we're going to listen for. And chances are, like I said, when you first ask that question, you are going to hear those types of responses. Okay. Now, the next follow-up question that I ask, again, we're still on the subjective aspect of this, is I really want to dig deeper. Okay. So I say, I want you to fast forward to a day in the future when you are out of debt. And sometimes I'll invite the client to close their eyes. I'll say, I just want you to sit back in your chair, just relax. You know, sometimes you can see people getting really nervous, sort of feeling anxious. They're getting tense, right? You can physically see their body language. And you want them to sort of just take a deep breath, relax, just sit back in your chair a little bit, fast forward to a day in the future when you are out of debt. I want you to picture that day. I want you to see yourself out of debt. What's that feel like? Let them share with you what it feels like. What does that free up for you? What is different about how you make decisions or think about money? Because at that point, you don't have any debt. What are you visualizing? What are you envisioning is different about you and about your life and about the types of decisions you make because you don't have debt at that time? And then I ask, what is different about the things you are able to spend money on, the things you have, right? The things you maybe don't have now, like what is different about that? Ooh, really quickly, you guys, we are at 92 people. And my goal, remember, if we get 100, I will upgrade my Zoom account. We got to make this happen. Okay. So I will do it as soon as we hit 100. So not today while I'm on the call, but like for the next one. So woo, doggy, let's see. Okay. The highest besides this was like 77 or something. So, okay. And now here's the thing, you guys, all of those things they just described, the feeling, the way they make decisions, the types of things that they can spend money on at that point that they can't now, the types of things that they maybe have or, that they can't have now, the way they view themselves, that is why they want to get out of debt. That is their why. Okay. And that is their goal. That is actually the goal. I think there's this idea for financial coaches that in order to have a financial goal, it has to have numbers attached to it. A financial goal can be a feeling. A financial goal can be a mindset. A financial goal can be something that is not attached to a specific number, right? And this is one thing I would love to shift this idea in the way we view financial goals. there's this idea that it has to be quantifiable. And yes, it can be quantifiable. So you can say on a scale of 1 to 5, how confident are you in your decisions today about money? And they may say a 1. And then it's like, our goal is that you get to a 5 on that scale. So I want to keep assessing. That's still quantifiable. It's still measurable, right? But it's actually attached to how they feel, how they think, and that kind of thing. Now, here's another sort of a take that may wrinkle some feathers a little bit, and that's okay, is I really want to challenge this idea that getting out of debt is a goal. Getting out of debt is the strategy to achieve the goal of how they want to feel about their money. It is the how, okay? It doesn't necessarily have to be the goal, right? So one of the things that little asterisk really quickly, you guys, is if you ask your clients these questions, it is amazing marketing. One of the things we teach in the Financial Coach Academy in your marketing is that you should be bridging the gap. Bridging the gap is this idea of where are your clients today and where do they want to be? And then sort of expressing the idea that coaching bridges that gap. Coaching gets you from where you are to where you want to be, right? And the problem is that we can't always articulate very well, where do our clients want to be, right? We say you want to have 3 to 6 month emergency fund. Well, yes, but why? Right? Like they want that for a different reason. Like, why do they want that 3 to 6 month emergency fund? Because it gives them security, gives them peace of mind. They'll sleep better at night. They'll feel like they can make slightly riskier decisions as opposed to always making the safe bet because they just don't have anything to fall back on, right? Like those are the things that you will hear. And that is great marketing. That's bridging the gap, right? So being able to articulate what that is, it's easier to do that when you're actually using words that your clients give you. Right? So why do you want to get out of debt? What's in it for you? So then I'll ask the client, I will tell the client, okay, so that's actually our goal, is for you to feel that way, for you to be able to have that thing, for you to be able to make these types of decisions and feel really great about it. And getting out of debt will likely be a part of that process that we use, right? It's part of your journey, but the goal is that you experience all of those things. And then I ask, what if you were able to achieve those things while you still had your debt? Do you believe that to be possible? Would you believe me if I told you that was possible? Because that is actually what we're shooting for. I fully believe, and I've seen it so many times, that's probably why it's easy for me to believe it, that a client can achieve those results and still have debt. They can feel amazing about the way they make these decisions. They can feel really proud of their financial position. They can feel at peace. They can feel more confident, all of these things, and still have their debt, maybe because they can see like there's progress being made. They can see that they're paying it off and that it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time sometimes, right? So here are the results from this aspect of the conversation that we just had from the client. The first is that it's not simply about paying off the debt. It's about who you become in the process of paying off your debts, right? And we are emphasizing that right now, which means once they start the journey of getting out of debt, because we're going to get to that point where it's now, okay, we're taking action at some point, right? We haven't gotten to the planning stage yet or anything, but once they are, they know there is more to coaching. There's more that we're going to be doing while they're in the process of like working the plan, right? Go ahead and tell me really quickly, go ahead and type in the chat, type a yes if you paid off debt at some point, if you became debt-free at some point. And I'm going to say besides your mortgage, go ahead and type yes. Yeah, like almost everybody, like a lot. And chances are, if you haven't, you're like working your plan, right? Like you can see that you are getting out of debt, like it's going to happen. Billy, I'm not going to be able to read that paragraph yet, but just so you know, but I will go read the chat after we're done. Let's see. Okay. So yeah, like so many people. Good job, everybody. That's all I want to say. Celebrate you. I love that. Okay. So here's one thing that I think we don't always want to admit, which is like the day you become debt free, it's awesome and it's exciting and you feel really proud of that. And it can be a little anticlimactic a little bit, right? And here's why I think and we don't want people to know that for some reason. We don't want people to like know that like this big date that you've got out there is like, it happens and it's like, woohoo! Okay, that's it. And here's why. The reason is because no balloons fell from the sky. Exactly. I'm not able to read all these chats, but that one just came up perfectly in my feed. So it's because at that point, it's more of just the date finally came, but we changed into the type of person up until that point that knew we were going to get out of debt. It was just a matter of waiting for the checks to come in and being able to throw the money to it kind of thing. But like who we became in the process shifted long before that date came, right? So that's what we are trying to create in our clients, is that perspective, right? But you also don't want to discourage them and say, just so you know, the date you're out of debt, it's not going to be that great. Like you don't want to tell them that, right? It's just simply one of those things where you want them to know that there's more to it than just that financial milestone. There is the mindset milestone, the behavioral milestone, all of that, okay? So the other result from this aspect of the conversation is that we are getting their buy-in on the journey itself, right? That there is a journey here we're going to undertake, that it is not a fad diet. It is a lifestyle change, because I fully believe this is one of the aspects of sort of the way people talk about getting out of debt in the financial world that I want to change, which is like, do it as quickly as possible, sacrifice to the nth degree. It should be a painful experience. You should hate every moment of that, yada, yada, yada. And the reality is that will work for some people. Some people want that level of focus or work ethic, or like whatever you want to call it. Like they need that and they like that, and it will work well for them. And a lot of other people will say, if that's how I have to do it, then I just won't do it at all, then fine, right? And it's like, we have to find a way that will work great for them. And like, you can enjoy the journey. You can enjoy the growth aspects of it. You can actually enjoy your money while getting out of debt, okay? So this is where the other result from this conversation, and I wish I could like put this in bold on your screen right now. I really want you to hear me when I say this. What we are trying to do is have them get out of debt for the right reasons and not because of shame. And I want you to think about this. Think about somebody who is like wanting to lose weight, okay? Am I losing weight because I'm ashamed of the way I look and I hate my body? Or am I losing weight because I love my body and I want to take care of it? See the difference? I'm going to say that question again because I think it's perfectly, the analogy ties to money. Am I losing weight because I'm ashamed of the way I look and I hate my body? Or am I getting out of debt, losing weight because I love my body and I want to take better care of it? The motivation, the driver there is totally different. And we want our clients loving their life, loving their money, loving what they're able to do for themselves, and getting out of debt is part of that process. Okay. And that's why they're doing it. And that leads into the next sort of section of the conversation that I have with the client. And I will ask them, typically at this point, I'll have their debt sort of in front of me. Typically we've got some sort of informal budget. It's a very rough budget we've created. We have their debts in front of us as far as like, are we talking about credit cards, student loans? What are the estimate for balances, like that kind of thing. And so I will say, let's talk about some of these debts that you have. What benefits has your debt provided to you? And typically when I ask that question, it's kind of like a, what? Huh? I don't understand the question. And I will say, what have you gained from some of the items that went on your credit cards? Or what gains did you experience from your student loans, right? And this is something where it can be a really hard thing for people to come up with, because they are told, they're in all this messaging that's out there, that all debt is all bad all of the time. That's the message. All debt is all bad all of the time. right? And I think we need to sort of get to this place where, again, it's where we don't want to lead from a place of shame. Okay. And so this idea of, I am sure there are some things that went on your credit cards, even where at that point you did the best that you could, right? Or that thing that you put on there. Yes, maybe it cost you things. It cost you some interest, cost you some stress. It cost you some things. Absolutely. I'm not trying to diminish that. I just don't want us to be hyper focused on all the negative and ignore the positive. Okay. So the idea is like, let's talk about your 6-figure student loan debt. What are some things that you gained while being in college, you know? And it's this idea of like, did you make lifelong friendships? Did you meet your spouse in college? Did you learn a lot about how to study and how to research and how to learn? And, you know, did you learn about your work ethic at that time and how to be independent since it was your first time away from home? Like there are so many things, right? Like I always think about even somebody who's like, well, but my degree is in this and I went into it and I hated it. And so now I'm doing something totally different. And it's like, yes, but that is what got you to where you are today to find your passion, right? So again, it's like not regretting that phase, but appreciating that phase for what we learned because of it, okay? And sometimes I will need to task the client with this step around going home, and your homework is to come up with 10 to 15 different things that, like, let's say it's credit cards. I want you to think of 10 to 15 purchases that went on your credit card that added value to your life. Okay. And they have to come back and tell me what that is. What I need you to come up with 10 to 15 things that were positive from your college days that happened because you took out student loans for your college. Okay. I think about, like, I mean, I graduated from school with student loans. I was a first generation college student. Nobody in my family had gone to school before me. And after I went to college, and yes, I took out student loans, both of my sisters went to college after that. And my one sister is my older sister. So she did not go to college right out of high school, but then I went to college. And then after that, she went to college because she saw me do it. And I think about that. I think about the fact that my student loans gave my family a different path overall, right? That they would not have had if it was not for me taking that leap. And yeah, maybe I could have done it a different way, but you know what? I didn't know any better, right? I had nobody in my family to talk to me about that kind of stuff. So I did the best that I could. And I am grateful for that. Okay. I am really wanting to know what happened with Colleen, because I can see everybody saying, that's amazing, Colleen. And I'm like, what Colleen do? So I'll have to go read that chat later, but awesome, Colleen. I don't know what you did, but it's awesome. Okay. So that is the next step. You know, one other analogy that I give, and I started giving this a few years ago during this part of the conversation, is around Marie Kondo. So if you guys know Marie Kondo, she's the organizer. She's like this adorable little package of a human being that helps people. She goes into their house and she helps them organize, right? And her approach is like, before you pitch something, you say thank you to it for like what it gave you at the time that you had it, right? So again, you're saying goodbye to it, but you're saying goodbye to it not from a place of shame or regret, but from a place of like appreciation and gratitude. And I think about when I lost a bunch of weight and I had to purge a whole bunch of clothes. And I really thought about the clothes that I was getting rid of. And I was like, thank you for giving me the confidence after I had my daughter and I didn't recognize my body anymore. And I had no idea how to dress this body that I had. Like, thank you for giving me confidence on those days. And it might be that today, like when I was pitching those clothes, like I did not like those clothes. I was like, oh, I don't know why I wore that. Like today, who I am is different, but who I was when I wore those clothes, I appreciated that outfit. I remember feeling good in them, right? And the same is true for our debts. At some point, we did that because we needed something, whether we needed a vacation, that we were just burnt out. And yeah, it went on a credit card. I am not saying that is the best strategy. It was simply the best strategy for that person at a time of their life when they didn't know any different. Right. And we want to, I think, focus on that a little bit better. The other thing that we talk about is, you know, did you do the best that you could at that time? Did you know any better at that time? owning that you are not perfect and that you have made mistakes and you are not alone in that. And this will not be the last time you make a financial mistake, right? One thing that can be very, you can observe this a lot with clients who are wanting to get out of debt, is they are paralyzed to take action with their finances in the future because they live in fear that they are going to make a mistake, that they are going to make a financial mistake again. And they are like just paralyzed. And these conversations can really help them to feel more confident in taking the next action, whatever that is, whether it's saving money or starting to invest money or buying a rental property, you know, all those types of things. These types of reconciling these things in them can be so beneficial for them long term. Okay, so having the conversation is really important. The other conversation that I'll have is, you know, do you believe debt is evil? This is another one of those messaging things that is passed around. Credit cards are evil. And I fully believe, this is something I've said for years, but debt is not evil and it is not holy. I believe by giving it those terms, by calling it those things, we are giving way too much power to the debt itself. A credit card is simply a piece of plastic. Some people can use them really effectively and some people can't, but it is us that gets to make that choice. It is not the card itself that is evil and that kind of thing. Okay. So the idea is like taking ownership of that allows them in the future to not be afraid to have a credit card at some point, right? And they don't even need to use it, but like some people just don't even want to ever have one again, right? And again, that's coming from a place of shame. It's coming from a place of fear, and we want to sort of help them begin the process of moving through that, okay? So the result of this part of the conversation, you guys, is transitioning the client from always feeling motivated when they need to fix something versus feeling motivated because they want to go from good to great. And what we are doing is we are planting that seed of, this is, you know, you can want more for yourself, even if something isn't wrong with you, right? You can take action, not because something needs fixed in you, but because we simply want things to be even better than they already are. And we want to shift that sort of motivational aspect and get them thinking in that way. And it's not going to change overnight. This isn't like we have this conversation and all of a sudden the client like starts thinking that way. We are simply starting to plant the seeds through a conversation around something that they've always wanted or have wanted recently, which is to get out of debt. Okay. Now we're going to start moving into the objective portion of the strategy. And I like to first talk about strategies that we want to implement that avoid failure. So a lot of people say that they want to get out of debt, but they either don't follow through or they do follow through, but then they find themselves back in debt at some point in the future. And these ground rules that I want to talk with the client about are what we set while you're on the journey to ensure that that client becomes the exception to that they are going to follow through and they're going to follow through forever, right? They're not going to find themselves back in debt in a bad way, right? And so we simply talk about that with the client right before we even get into the assessment and the planning phase and all of that. So I will say there's 3 ground rules that we want to set right now that are here because they help us to ensure success. And the first one is to be honest and realistic with yourself. This is what I tell the client, that this is something that we have to agree right now. You will be honest and realistic with yourself. And this shows up in a few different ways. The first is on being honest and realistic with what you will spend money on. So, you know, this idea of like, if somebody were to call you tomorrow, a family member, and say something happened to a loved one and you need to hop on a plane and get here. If you would book that plane ticket tomorrow, we need to financially prepare for that sort of expense, right? Because you would spend money on it and that is okay. If you and your husband would still go on date nights all the time, if you would take your kids on mini vacations while you still have debt, that is okay. Let's just be honest and realistic about that. And let's start planning for it now. Because if we don't, those expenses, when they happen, will go on a credit card while you're trying to get out of debt. Okay. The idea is that everyone is different. There is no one way you have to do this. If you want to do those things, we're going to build them in. If you don't want to do them, if you are the type of person that's like, nope, get me in and out of this as quickly as possible, no problem. But the goal is that you are being honest and realistic with yourself. And the key component of this too is that learning the skill of planning ahead and being intentional is critical to getting out of debt and staying out of debt. So that skill must start today. Okay. It is part of the journey of getting out of debt. And it's also the skill that's going to last you for a lifetime. It doesn't matter what goal you have with your money. Chances are, if we have that skill in place, then that goal is more likely to be achieved. Okay. The other thing with this is that we are always in search of the sustainable approach. We want to remove, and I tell the client this, my goal is that we are removing the ups and downs. Billy, the skill is learning the skill of planning ahead and being intentional with what you're going to spend money on. So saying, this goes along with like saving first. Like, so the idea is like, if you are going to take a vacation 6 months from now, we actually want to start saving for that today. Like, let's put 1/6 of that aside. That way, when that trip comes, it's paid for and we're not falling back on a credit card kind of thing. Now I'm under the philosophy, and this is where some of us may, disagree, and that's totally okay. Like, let's say 6 months from now, my client has savings for that vacation. They could put that on a credit card and then take the money out of savings and pay the credit card. A lot of our clients do that. So and I think the reason a lot of our clients do that, you guys, is because they aren't looking at the credit card as the problem. It's the way they manage and make decisions with the card that they have figured out how to manage more effectively. And they feel so much more at peace with that. They feel more confident with that. It's not like, oh my God, I put something on the credit card. What have I done? There is no emotional sort of response to that. It's simply their strategy. It's just simply the convenience of using it. Right. And again, you can choose not that. We have some clients who don't do that, and that's totally fine too. They'll just take the money out of savings and pay for it, but they'll put it in their checking account and then, use their debit card kind of thing. But so the skill of planning ahead and being intentional, and you cannot do that. You cannot learn that skill if you aren't first honest and realistic with yourself. Okay. So, and the goal of all of this at this point is that we are always looking for the most sustainable approach to a client getting out of debt. The thing that they could do and it feels good. It feels like it's amplifying their life. It is adding to their life. It is not taking away from their life. Okay. And I also want to make sure that we're removing the ups and downs of this journey. So this idea of like, well, I'm going to just go crazy for 3 months, pay off $10,000 of my debt. And then in the 4th month, oh crap, there's these things that I said I could go without, but maybe I really couldn't, or I couldn't for as long as I thought I could. And so now $4,000 goes back on my credit card, and you can insert any number, $1,000 and 400, right? It's the goal is, or the idea is that it's the roller coaster ride. We are trying to remove that as much as possible to make it as sustainable as possible. The other thing that we don't necessarily want, and why this conversation is so important, is like, I don't want it to be that the way a person manages their money while they're in debt is vastly different than the way they manage their money the day they get out of debt, because the learning curve is so challenging when you do that, where it's almost like, how can we build a way that is so sustainable? You're making progress on your debt, you're paying it off, that's, humming along. And this feels like, even if it took 10 years, it's good. We're fine. Right? Like, that's totally okay. And as soon as the debt is paid off, maybe we make a couple of adjustments, which I'm going to talk about in just a second when we get to the end. But the idea is that, like, for the most part, a lot of it stays the same. We're just kind of working the plan. It's just that our, what we're doing with extra money is shifting. So the second, so that was the first one, be honest and realistic with yourself, what you're going to spend money on, being okay that everyone's different and this is the way that I'm going to do it. That's totally fine. learning the skill of planning ahead and being intentional so that you can have a very sustainable approach. And you probably need to be saving first while getting out of debt. So I believe passionately that we need to be saving money for anything that's going to come up. And then any extra money on top of that goes towards debt, because that's sort of what stops the vicious cycle. If you do not have, let's say, a car repair fund, and you take $500 out of your checking account today to pay off your credit card, and then tomorrow your car breaks down and it's $500, how are you going to pay for it? It's going to go right back on the credit card. And that journey is emotionally damaging for somebody who is not trusting themselves with money yet, right? The idea is like, oh, I paid it off. I'm so proud of myself. Good job. And then, oh, I have to put something back on my credit card. What is wrong with me? Why did I do this? See, I don't know what I'm doing. I'll never get out of debt. That inner critic gets really loud. The inner critic is louder for somebody who doesn't trust themselves with money than the inner cheerleader oftentimes. So the inner cheerleader the day before, they're feeling proud of themselves, but that person gets real quiet as soon as they have a whammy that happens and it has to go back on a credit card. Their inner critic gets loud again. We want to remove that instance from happening as much as possible. The idea is we're looking for confirmation along the path that they can trust themselves, that they're making good decisions. It's just one little nudge after another. Check, check, check. And then like you want those mounting, you want them experiencing that. The second one is be honest and realistic with me, their coach. So I will tell them, we're going to come up with a plan here in just a second. There is no one right way to do this. Throughout this time, I want you to tell me what you are liking about it. I want you to tell me what's working. I want you to tell me what's not working. I want you to tell me how you're feeling. I'm going to be checking in with you often. And I just want you to know that at any point we need to shift, we shift, and it is okay. It doesn't mean yet you failed. It doesn't mean the process that we came up with failed. It simply means that like we probably are going to discover some things about ourselves in this journey, and that's a really good thing. And when we learn those things, we might need to sort of add in some new elements, and that's okay. Like you need to give them permission right away that they can come to you when that's happening. Okay. And then the last one is that I ask them, because we're about to go into the strategy section. So I say that one of the strategies that we use to ensure success and avoid failure when getting out of debt is to abandon any preconceived ideas of how you should get out of debt. That our goal is to come up with a way that works for you, that gets you excited, and we want to go into it with that open mind. And when we talk with a friend who's doing it differently, we want to say, awesome, I'm so glad you found a way that works for you. I did too, right? Like I want you to feel so good about that your way is your way. And that's all that matters. Okay. So we're going to have to abandon all the shoulds. And so the next step is where I want to ask them, with that in mind, it leads into the next section, which is like, so given that, what have you heard about getting out of debt? What are some of the things that you heard you should definitely do, or things that you should definitely not do if you have debt? And I just say, I want to hear from you. Tell me like some of the things that you have heard about getting out of debt, some thoughts that you have about, how you should or shouldn't do it. And this is important for a number of reasons. Number one, and this is a takeaway that I hope you will apply to every concept you coach a client on. Okay. Every single concept, what I'm about to tell you applies. The client's foundation of knowledge is going to be different from ours. And we need to find out what their knowledge foundation is. What do they know and what do they think before we start adding to what they should know and what they should think, right? Like we need to know where they're starting from before we start giving them more inputs. Okay. So I also want to hear from the client, because if I give them a strategy, or we sort of pinpoint a strategy that's going to work for them at the next step, and they have heard that that strategy is bad, it could end up leading to them not feeling totally bought into it. Okay. And I want to know what they think, what kinds of things they've heard, so that we can just simply talk about those things before we even, expand their knowledge. Okay. think about this as like fact finding. Where are their biases already? What strategies have they heard work best? What things matter to them? You know, what steps have they heard that they should avoid? What are some of the different payoff methods that they've heard of, and what do they think of those, right? What is most important to them when it comes to getting out of debt? This is where you will hear so many different answers to that question. What is most important to you when getting out of debt? Some people are going to say, what's most important is I just get out of it as quickly as possible. I want it paid off as fast as possible, right? Some people will say, what's most important is that I'm making progress and that I'm always making progress, but it doesn't really matter to me how long it takes. Some people will say, what's most important to me is how much interest I'm going to pay while I'm getting out of debt. Other people say, like, this idea of sort of balance. Like, I want to be getting out of debt, but I just want to enjoy life at the same time. You know, like, that's important to me, right? Like, that you are going to hear so many different things. And that is so important to us as a coach, to make sure that we are coming up with a strategy that honors those desires. Okay. I need to take a drink here. Okay. Now we are going to get into more of the, this is a bit of the objective part of it as well. We're all starting to get into the assessment aspect as well of what I was talking about earlier. Let me just look at my notes really fast. Sorry, getting all jumped around here. Okay. Yeah. So really what I say to the client next is, okay, what we want to figure out next is sort of what our approach is going to be to you getting out of debt. Like, what approach are you going to adopt? And the first thing we have to do is gain clarity, gain some awareness. Like I said, we've typically already started this because we've got their debts in front of us. But if you, depending on sort of your client flow and your journey, depending on the type of prep work you're getting from the client, and if you are on this call right now and you're thinking, I don't have any of that figured out, or I don't feel confident in that, that is the kind of stuff that we, like, the academy is all of that. Like, it's literally just step by step. Here's the client journey. Here's the prep work. Here's why that step is important. Here's what your client's probably thinking and feeling at that stage, and all of that. So check out the Financial Coach Academy course if that's something that you need help with. But the idea is that we want to first gain financial awareness. If you think about it, you guys, what we have done up until this point is less about financial awareness and more about an internal awareness. We're gaining awareness of our thoughts and our feelings about the debt, and we are trying to reframe those. We're trying to shift them from shame to, you know, positivity and all of that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to shift. This is more objective. We're going to go into financial awareness. Okay. So this is where we will look at, and I will tell the client, the first thing we have to do when it comes to gaining financial awareness is figure out what is our starting point. So in order to do that, we're going to take a look at your debts now. We're going to get them all on a pretty sheet of paper. Spreadsheet is fine, whatever you want to do. And we're going to, you know, look at them as a whole. So balance, interest rate, payment amount. If there's some important payment terms, such as like balloon payments or something like that, that's number one. And then number two is we're going to look at your budget and see how much can we throw at your debt every month in addition to the minimum payment. So like, what is a reasonable amount based on everything they've told us? Remember, some people want balance. So it's like, you know, let's make sure, yes, maybe you have $1,000 extra in discretionary cash flow, but balance is important to you. So how would you feel if we took 750 of that and it went towards your debt, and the other 250 went into, I know, a different fund of some sort, right? And again, it really depends on who the client is. Is it a vacation fund? Is it a, you know, home decor fund? Like, you know, that type of stuff, clothing fund, whatever the case may be. And other times it's like, okay, this is what we've got. They're the person who wants out of debt as quickly as possible. So we're going to use all $1,000 because we're looking at your budget, and that should be pretty reasonable, right? So, after we have done that, you guys, I ask, what do you think now that you're seeing your debts laid out in front of you? What's coming up for you right now? So many clients have never looked at their debts written out as a total before. So I cannot stress this enough. It is very important to pause and talk with them at this moment, to check in with them. How are you doing? If you are not careful, they could be so emotionally triggered in that moment because they are like terrified at what they just saw. They could have thought their debt was like 20,000 and they just discovered it was $50,000 total, right? Because again, that is very normal that they're kind of totaling it up in their head, but it's an accurate total, right? And if you're not careful, the reason this is so important is because everything you talk about after this moment, if you have not paused for a moment to just have a conversation with them about that, they're not even going to hear a damn word you just said. Okay. It's going to be really hard for them to process anything more. You've got to take a moment to help them, talk through that. So you can say, tell me how you're feeling. Tell me what's coming up for you. How are you feeling? And circle back on the fact that some of these things served you well. Some of these things, remember, we talked about this benefit and this benefit. Remember this time of your life that you had this. I've had people crying because they feel so ashamed of that debt total when 30 minutes earlier, they told me that credit card right there was the medical bills from their labor and delivery for their child because their insurance didn't pay for it. And it's like, you have your daughter. I know this stinks. Trust me, I get it. I know this is a hard number to look at, but what I want you to focus on is what that gave you, right? And again, you can do this because you've already had that conversation with them previously. Okay. So you really want to bring this full circle at this point. Okay. So some of these things just gave you satisfaction in a day when you were feeling crappy about yourself. And I get that retail therapy is not what we shoot for, but also being depressed isn't what we're shooting for either. And if this made you feel better, even temporarily, I know this is just what it gave you at that time of your life. Right. And we're going to do differently going forward. And that's why we're here. Right. So you really just want to pause for a moment. Please do not skim over that number. I know one thing I did wrong, you guys, really early on is I would compare that to what I'd seen previously. And I would say things like, oh, I have clients who have way worse than this. I have clients who have double this or whatever. And honestly, it does not freaking matter. Do not say that, please. I'm so mad at myself for saying that. There's some things, right? We look back in the day and I'm like, oh, God, I wish I wouldn't have done that. And the reason is because that is relative. Right. I've had a client with $1,000 in credit card debt that couldn't sleep at night, $1,000, right? Because that $1,000 was a really big deal to her. And I've had clients with 100,000 and they're like, we figured we'll pay it off eventually. Right. And everything in between and reverse of that. So just know none of that matters. What matters is what that client thinks and what they're feeling and what they are experiencing in that moment. Okay. The next step is we actually going to go into the assessment phase. We're going to assess all of the options. Now, the way I do this, and you do not need to use the same tool, is I use 𝗪𝗡𝗪42. 𝗪𝗡𝗪42 has a debt payoff calculator. I actually have some images of it on my screen that I'm going to show you. Let me make sure I have my notes here in a way that I can do this at the same time. Before I show you this, so 𝗪𝗡𝗪42 has a debt reduction calculator. I'm pretty sure that's the title of it, debt reduction calculator. I started using it back in the day. I just love it. There might be other tools out there that do the same thing or are better. It works great. I love it. It's what I've always done. So it's probably going to be a long time before I change that. But by all means, use the tool that's going to work best for you. And I'll show it to you in just a second. But the idea is you put your debt in a table, and then it gives you different options for the order that you want to pay it off in. So you can prioritize them by the snowball, and it automatically ranks them in the snowball order. You can put them in the order of avalanche, and it does it that way. And there's a few different options. Typically what I talk with a client about and what we give presentations on is that there's 4 main strategies for paying off debt. I won't elaborate too much on what these are, but Snowball, if you're not aware, is ranking your debts in order of the lowest balance amount. You pay off the one with the lowest balance first, and then you pay off the one with the second lowest balance second, and so forth. Avalanche is you rank them in order of your interest rate and you pay off the one with the highest interest rate first. The idea there is that it's costing you the most money, it's costing you the most interest. So it's financially the smartest way, I guess you could say, is the argument behind it. There's sort of debt, 𝗧𝗏𝗘𝗢. It's kind of like you rank them all by payment amount, except for mortgages or real estate. You know, he's like the real estate guy. So the idea is you prioritize the one with the highest payment amount. His argument is that it frees up the most cash flow. So obviously that works for some people, especially if they have a very tight budget. Like there is like no wiggle room. So we are sort of one whammy away from something going on a credit card. Yeah, certainly freeing up cash flow from a monthly basis makes it so you are able to pivot, you're able to be more flexible, you're able to sort of respond to different situations that arise. So that may be better for some people. We always see that the fourth way is like we call it Debbie Downer. So DEBTY, Debbie Downer, which is the one that you're having the most emotional response to. The one that when you look at it, when you make the payment every month, you sort of think like, oh, I can't believe I did that. And it triggers those feelings of regret. What it does is it affects your identity and how you view yourself as a money manager. So if you're always looking at something that like you regret every single month, it keeps putting you in that old mindset, right? So sometimes you just got to get that out of your life. We got to get that reminder out of your life. And I could give you a whole bunch of examples. I'll just think of two really quickly. The first one is a client who had 3 credit cards, each with about $5,000 on them. And one of them was the $5,000 that she paid her attorney for her divorce. And every time she made that payment, she relived that divorce. She got bitter and jaded and angry and hurt and sad. And like she was grieving all over again. And the idea is like, let's get that out of your life, please. You know, another example with newlyweds is newlyweds that sort of like started their marriage or signed up for something and they sort of regret it, like they both fell for temptations or something. An example there is, I don't know if this even exists anymore, but it used to be that like you could go to like these cookware classes and you would buy like super expensive cookware, like thousands of dollars worth of cookware, and you would get a free vacation. And people, they would sell it to newlyweds for like, oh, use this as your honeymoon, right? And so many newlyweds that we've talked to are like, I'm still paying for that credit card. And it's 5 years into our marriage and we hate it. We look back on that and we're like, what were you thinking? You know, like that kind of thing. And so it's like, yeah, let's get that out of your life sort of thing. So I want to address something really quickly because I think it's important. And I know there are this argument out there that the snowball is best. And the argument is because a client pays off a debt quickly, they feel excited. And so they continue to pay off their debts. And therefore, the debt snowball is the best strategy for getting out of debt. Okay. I promised you, I believed this for a very long time. I was hook, line, and sinker bought into that idea. I firmly believe now that that is the correct observation, but the wrong conclusion. And I'm going to say that again. It is the right observation, but the wrong conclusion. Here's why. The most important thing is not that a client pays off the lowest balance debt. The most important thing in that observation is that the client feels excited about paying off their debts. The client's excitement is the key component. And they can feel excited in any debt payoff strategy if we have done our job well in planting these seeds and having these good conversations on the front end. Okay. So it is so important that I think about when we do this, if I were to, design a debt payoff strategy for a client without talking with them. Okay. And I would say, well, according to this way, you're going to get out of debt the fastest. Okay. This one's going to happen at this timeline and all of that. The one thing that all of these calculators don't and really can't take into consideration is the client's buy-in on that timeline. And what I have seen to be true time and time again is that the more bought in and excited the client is, the faster it's going to happen than what it shows on a damn spreadsheet anyway. So it might say it's going to take you 2 years, but how many times, and for those coaches who have coached lots of clients, you've probably seen, it'll say 2 years, but when they are excited about it and they're starting to see the progress and they're like just so excited about what they are capable of, right? And again, they can feel that way and it does not matter the order of the debt payoff, okay? Then it's going to happen faster than 2 years anyway. Okay, it's going to happen faster. I believe that a client's excitement is what determines more than almost anything the trajectory that they are on when it comes to getting out of debt, which is why we need to spend a lot of time on the front end, getting them excited about what they're about to do. Okay, and about the journey that they're going to embark on. So I just want to like sort of emphasize that there is no spreadsheet that says, well, to the nth degree, if we take into account their enthusiasm, this is what will really happen. But that is crucial. It's a critical part of their journey on how fast it looks. Same, I'm going to kind of flip that on its head. It can say that it's the fastest way, but if they aren't excited about it, it's not going to happen that way either. It's going to actually take longer. Right? They're going to falter along the way. They're not going to feel as creative when clutch moments happen and they have to sort of figure out how to solve a problem without, throwing money at it and those types of things. But if they are excited about it, it's actually going to happen faster. So that's why it's like, we want to use the assessment, which I'm about to show you in just a second, to give them the plan, but more so to get them excited about whatever plan they choose. Okay. Let's see. Let me show you the spreadsheet here. And again, this is not mine. This is Vertex 42. My recommendation, if you're going to use this, they do have a commercial license. If you've got sort of two options, you can have the client download the spreadsheet. So you could give that as part of their homework. You could give them the link and you could say, hey, go download this, input your debt into this section right here, right? And you could have them do that and then share it with you in Google Sheets or something like that. If you are going to be doing this step for them, please honor their intellectual property by paying the nominal fee that they charge for a commercial license, okay? Let's see. So you input the information, you kind of put how much, again, you think that they can throw at their debt. That's a good plan for them. You've already looked at their budget, chances are, and then you sort of choose the strategy that you want them to follow, or that you're going to go through all of these. Let me be clear. Okay. So typically what I do is we go through all of these and you can do a custom order. So you can say, hey, this debt right here is like that emotional one. That's the one that you feel super, triggered every time you make the payment. What if we put a 1 there instead, right? What if we just prioritize that one? Now, this is really important. So we do that. And if you scroll down, once you make those changes, it's going to show you how long it takes to pay it off, the total interest paid, and exactly what month that will happen. Okay. So this is really important. Over here on the payment schedule, it really outlines you can always do additional payments as well. So if someone gets a bonus or an extra commission or a gift from a family member at the holidays or something like that, and they want to throw it towards their debt, they can add that as well. So typically we will be using this spreadsheet throughout their journey. But again, you don't have to do that. Now, this is really important, you guys. The benefit of having a coach is not all the tools you have, and it's not the spreadsheets, it's you. Okay. It's you being able to translate what you are seeing on those spreadsheets. If you rely too much on a spreadsheet like that, we can look at that, and especially we're in them all the time, right? I've used that debt payoff calculator, probably easily over 100 times with different clients. I am so familiar with it that when I look at it, I'm not intimidated by it. Some people are very intimidated by that kind of stuff, and they don't feel comfortable saying that. So I believe that it is our job to actually articulate and help them to visualize what the spreadsheet is telling us. So I always feel like financial coaches, chances are numbers tell us a story, right? The numbers by themselves aren't important. Yeah, we don't need the spreadsheet anymore, Kenny. I stopped showing it. Hopefully you guys were able to see it for a quick second. Were you able to see it for a second? Okay. We don't need it anymore. And the reason is because I'm about to visualize this with you. You don't need to be looking at the spreadsheet to do this step. Okay. So the idea is to really help the client visualize what that plan will look and feel like to them. Okay. So you want to help them live the experience, live the strategy before they actually choose the strategy. Okay. I'm going to say that again. You want to help them live that experience, live that strategy before they actually choose it. So I will say, okay, if we were to choose the snowball approach, we're going to have your first debt paid off next month. So next month, January, you're going to kick off the year with one debt gone already. And then your second debt, we're going to pay it off 7 months later. So by July, you'll have your next, like those types of things. I'm literally having a conversation with them about this. It's going to take you 2 years and 1 month based on our plan. If we use the strategy to pay off your debt, 2 years and 1 month. So fast forward, we're in January of 2024. That's when you're going to pay it off if we use this strategy. And at the end of the day, it's going to cost you X amount in interest. And I will literally give them that number. Because again, I'm going to be looking at the spreadsheet, but they aren't. Okay. And I'll say, so I just want you to think about that. How does that feel? Do you like that plan? Does that feel reasonable? Does that get you excited? You really just want to talk with them about that. And then we switch and we say, okay, let's say we prioritized that credit card that you hate so much that you just like, ugh, and I'm like, if we were to put that one first, it would actually be April of next year when your first debt is paid off. But I want you to imagine that by April, that one credit card that like just turns your stomach every month when you pay it is gone in April. In the first example, that one debt that you don't like is going to be paid off in a year and a half or whatever, you know what I mean? Because again, you can see all of that. What I am doing is I'm helping them to experience that strategy before they actually choose the strategy. Do you guys see that? Okay. I am translating what that spreadsheet is telling me. Okay. The spreadsheet is giving me that information, so I don't have to do the math in my head, thank God, because that's dangerous. But I still need to tell that story to the client. That is our job. Okay. So I do that for all of them. And I say, how does that feel? And then I just ask them to sort of like, tell me what you're thinking. Which one of these is standing out to you as the one that gets you most excited? And that is the ultimate factor that I am asking. Which one of these gets you most excited? And again, earlier in the conversation, some people told you what's most important to them is going to be how much interest they pay over while they're getting out of debt. Some people are going to say the timeline. Some people are going to say work-life balance or a sort of like money balance, right? And so chances are their answer on which one gets them most excited is the one that honors that conversation you had earlier, right? And so then we choose the strategy. So chances are there is one, sometimes there's two, sometimes you'll hear something like, well, I think, really quickly, you guys, I will say, what's your gut telling you right now? So after we sort of go through them, I say, what's your gut telling you? They'll sometimes say, well, I think it's this one, and they'll kind of elaborate. And again, you'll usually see that there are some of those preconceived ideas coming in, like, but I heard that you're not supposed to blah, blah, blah. And that's why they're leaning towards one. And so just know that you are going to learn so much about your client when you ask this step of the conversation, or when you get to this step of the conversation, right? And it's a really cool moment. Okay. But chances are they are going to choose the strategy that they're going to follow. Okay. So you're going to say, okay, so we're going to follow this strategy. Sometimes it's a custom. It's like we order them in the way that we want to order them. Sometimes it's avalanche. Sometimes it is snowball, right? The idea though, is that it's not my decision. I am not telling them which one is best for them. We are co-creating the strategy that is best for them. Okay. Which I just think is a really beautiful experience. And I think it's really the way coaching should work. Okay. And then I say, so we're going to do this. And then I go back to the spreadsheet and I actually make that choice, because sometimes we're off of that one, and I do it and I say, okay, so this is what we're going to do. How do you feel? No problem, Vicky. It's okay. It's not that big of a deal. Thank you for being co-host for as long as you were. And I will say, how are you feeling right now? And again, this is one of those moments, you guys, please pause to check in with your client and ask them how they are feeling. Likely there's two main responses, but there's sort of everything in between too, which is the first is intimidated and nervous. They are like, now that I, we did all of this, like the rubber hits the road, we're going to take action, and holy shit, I'm terrified now. Right. And again, they have up until this point believed oftentimes that they can't be trusted to make good financial decisions, that they don't trust themselves, that they can't follow a plan. They've maybe wanted to get out of debt 10 times in the past and they never did it. Like all of these things are true for them in their mind, right? So at this point, it is so important to just acknowledge that it is okay to feel that way. I want you to be honest with me every step of the way. This is a really great time to provide some reassurance. Give them your vote of confidence. Like, we're in this together. We're going to, keep on track of this. I'm going to be with you every step of the way as we navigate this, all of that. And like, just provide some reassurance and validation at that point. Okay. This is also a really good time to remind them of why they are doing it. I want you to think back to how you're going to feel when you do this. Like, I want you to remember how this is going to feel and all of that, like all those things that they described earlier. Okay. Now the other response is pure excitement, enthusiasm. And they're like, I got this, no problem. Oh my God, let's go, hurry up. Like they've got sort of this like frenzy energy about them. Okay. And it's really good. You want them to feel excited. Everything we did was in order to help them to feel excited about their path. And you want to be careful. You want to remind them that this is a journey we're on and that our goal is to create sustainable habits while we are doing this. And if we're not careful, we can jump out the gate too fast and sort of like start way too quickly in a way that like we can't sustain for long. And sometimes that's okay because we sort of overcorrect and that helps us find balance, and other times it's like, just be careful, sort of like not jumping out the gate in such a way that like you can't possibly sustain that and stick with it. And so then you sort of have to like, go buy yourself something. And I remind them, just remember, I want you to be honest with yourself, stay realistic, be honest with me. We're going to, this is a journey we're on, like that kind of thing. Okay. So after that, we dive into the reward and celebration aspect. And I asked them, now that we have this path and we have like some milestones of like, this debt should be paid off at this month and yada, yada, that kind of thing. And we can see all of that. I asked them, how can you celebrate the journey that you are embarking on right now? At what ways can you reward yourself? Can you celebrate? And I actually want to circle back on the things above that they had said, like why they want to get out of debt. And my goal is to help them find ways of building those things in while they are getting out of debt, not afterwards, not at the end, but while they're getting out of debt. Again, the whole focus here is that debt does not have to be a painful journey. At the end, we've said like, we've done it, we've gotten out of debt, but really the goal is to acknowledge we are doing it. Right? Like, how can we acknowledge that throughout the process? Not just we did it, but we are doing it, and celebrate progress over perfection, sort of thing. For my clients, they are usually burnt out. They're stressed. They're short on time. They're very busy professionals with families and all that sort of thing. And so as they get out of debt, we are typically looking for ways to celebrate by freeing up stress. We're freeing up time. We're freeing up mental energy. So things like they may, if they pay off a certain debt, let's say they pay off a truck payment and it frees up $500 a month. Okay. We may use 150 of that and hire a housekeeper and use the other 350 to go towards debt as like a way of celebrating the journey along the way. And again, some clients will not want to do that. Some clients, if they're focused on the timeline that they want out of it as quickly as possible, they won't need that. And that's totally okay. Sometimes it's hiring a personal trainer, learning to take care of yourself and prioritize yourself. Anything focused on growth can be really helpful because you're actually encouraging a growth mindset while they're getting out of debt, right? And it's more about the journey than the end result. A weekend getaway You can do that for relatively inexpensive in a lot of places where we're not talking about, a 4 seasons here. We're just talking about a little weekend away, right? You can simply make a list of like what those ideas are, have them think about that. Say, hey, I want you to just dream about those things. I just want you to think about it. Let me know what you come up with. That can be a really fun and enjoyable homework assignment for a client. It's like, just think of all the ways of like what we could add in that would like really make this a fun experience for you. Okay. Oh my God, getting out of debt and fun. Whoever thought those words could be going together, right? Okay. The idea is that you can make progress, and when you experience your life changing as a result of that hard work in progress, you actually want more of it, and it keeps you motivated. This is one thing that I have seen to be true time and time again, that by rewarding ourselves along the way, celebrating and actually shifting our life to be more in alignment with the things we wanted, like once the result happened, but we actually start getting it sooner, it actually creates more momentum. It doesn't take away. It's not an expense. It becomes more of an investment in them and in their growth and in their life. And they actually want to get out of debt even more so because of that, because they start getting a taste of what it's going to be like when they are out of debt. Right. And then we go into the reinforce and check-in phase. And typically, you guys, this is the part of the process that happens over time. So as we're coaching, so we're going to move on to like other things, but they're going to keep working the plan. They've got their budget. We're going to talk about habits. And I just keep checking in sometimes. And I say, how are things going? What parts of the debt payoff are you enjoying? Are we on track, behind, or ahead of schedule? When's the next milestone? What's the reward that you picked for that milestone? So really just holding them accountable to that. But a lot of the times they'll be sharing it with you. I mean, we get emails sometimes like, hey, let Kelsa know Friday, this is going to happen and I can't wait. And I'm going to get this, blah, 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 right? Like they're just going to share because they're so excited. That's where the excitement you can really tell is shining through. And then you just want to keep circling back on those desires from early in the conversation. Have you experienced any of these? Because again, those feelings of, I'm good with money. I know I'm making good decisions. Hopefully they are experiencing those long before they actually reach the milestone of getting out of debt. Okay. And so you want to be sharing those with the client and making sure you're celebrating those. Okay, you guys, that is the process that I use for coaching clients to get out of debt. And I'm going to ask for you to share some things in the comments. I know we are running long. I'm sorry. This is the first time I've ever sort of like presented this training. And so I wasn't sure how long it would take me. What I would love to hear from you in the chat is your biggest takeaway from this. What is one of your biggest takeaways? Biggest takeaways. Tell me in the chat. Getting out of debt isn't the goal. Client excitement is the most, you guys are going too fast. Important factor. Debt can actually provide emotional value. There's no one right method. Your excellent question examples in true caring. Oh, thank you. To focus on the emotional side first and then the strategy. Yes, Brandy. Okay, good. You guys these are so good. Love the shift away from shame and moving towards the positive reinforcement on managing money. Nikia says we are co-creating the plan, that we are always looking for the most sustainable approach to get the clients out of debt. Yes. Because if it's sustainable, then once the debt is gone, they're just sustaining those habits. It's like, there's not just like the debt. There's not the me that's like, I have debt. And then all of a sudden I become a completely different person once I'm out of debt. It's like, I am embodying the person I am becoming and who I am right away, right? Like that really is. And we're going to practice that. We're going to start making decisions from that place and all of that. So much, but I really love the tool, emotional wins, telling the story about getting out of debt. Yes. Okay, good. So the next thing that I want you guys to share in the chat is one actionable item from today's training that you're going to implement for your clients. What is one part of today? If you can pick one, hopefully you gained a whole bunch, but. Keep reiterating their way. Yes. Oh, Kat says this is the best webinar I've ever been on. Oh, thanks, Kat. I'm going to need some love, you guys. I was so nervous at the start of this, so thank you. Let's see. Ooh, asking them what speaks to them instead of me deciding for them. Awesome, Danielle. I love that. A lot of people loving the spreadsheet. I cannot take credit for that. Vertex 42, they've got a lot of good ones. That one's been around for, I mean, honestly, I probably used it for 10 years. Start with the emotional side. Again, I see a lot of people talking about your biggest takeaway is the tool. And that makes me a little nervous. I'm not going to lie, because the tool is not the takeaway. Okay. It can help you. Don't get me wrong. You are the guide though. Okay. So a tool is just a spreadsheet, and your clients may not love spreadsheets. They may not know how to interpret spreadsheets. They may not be able to look at it and see a story like we can. So just please make sure that you are using it, but don't let it become a crutch to you. Okay. Let the client input drive the direction. Client-led discussion. Good. Ooh, pausing when they see the debt amount. Yes. Translate numbers to their story. Ask them how their debt has served them. Yes. Willie, thank you for saying that. Such a key aspect of that journey. Okay. Thank you, you guys. Now, I'm curious how you are feeling about this approach compared to how you've been doing it up until now. So do you feel like this will give you more confidence? Do you feel like this is going to help you serve your clients better? Do you feel excited? Do you feel nervous? Like it can feel, chances are we're a whole bunch of things all at one time, but you know, maybe just try to succinctly describe to me how you are feeling. Empowered. Love this approach. Amazing. I feel like I can serve my clients so much better. It opens so many doors, doesn't it? I promise you will intimately know your clients so much better because of this. They will, even more importantly than that, they're going to intimately know themselves. And I'm telling you, it is such a beautiful thing. Somebody said that like the use of marketing. Yes, absolutely. Once you start to intimately get your clients like at a deeper level, marketing is so much easier, I promise. More confidence. I have a new prospect meeting on Monday and her main concern is debt. Oh, perfect. Let's see. Definitely feel more confident to work with my clients and work with them, together with them, not to tell them which way they need to do it. Validated for not focusing solely on the numbers. Yes, Linda, I know you've got such a beautiful focus on that. I've noticed that from just the comments you do in the Financial Coaches Unite group and all of that. And so I'm glad that you feel sort of reassurance that you are on the right track. Confident, however, nervous, totally normal. Lead with the confidence. I can see now that talking about debt, I think you mean to say is not just one session, Rachel, because you say is just one session. Yeah, it takes multiple sessions typically. And I do preface that to the client. So I can say, hey, we've got some work to do before we actually even get into the strategy aspect of this. We've got to wrap our brain around your debt. So it's going to take us a couple of sessions to do that. But I'm excited. Are you excited? Right? Like I really just let them know about that. Nikia says to explain the tools, the takeaway for me, I already take the approach that debt-free is one of the steps to achieving their goal. The tool is good because it allows me to show and discuss different methods together where previously I was choosing the method, assessing and then changing it if it didn't seem to work. Nikia, that's exactly how I started doing it too. So totally get it. Okay, let's see. I'm going to quote you on my social media today. Oh, yay. Thanks, Christine. Okay, let's see. Now, last question. My goal, I've shared with you guys many times in the group, is to take the stress out of money in our world. So one way I do that is by sharing things like this with all of you with hopes that you will take them and spread this message. And, hopefully you have learned hopefully you're able to see some distinction between the common messaging that is out there and how toxic it can be, and how all of us together can shift this narrative. And I want us to do that. So I'm going to ask you, my last question is, what is something that you learned today that your audience needs to hear, and you are going to take it and shout it from the rooftops from after today? Your audience needs to hear it. What do they need to hear? Adriana says all the subjective, objective questions are gold. Thank you. Not one right way, and it's a positive experience. Yes, Anna. Credit cards are not the problem. Debt is not the goal. It's part of the plan. The goal is not the payoff of the debt. Yes, I have been saying this. I'm not kidding you guys. I said this on a live on Instagram like 2 weeks ago. And you know how you can see the emoji responses, right? And I literally had said like, getting out of debt is not the actual goal. Like it's something after that. And I saw all these like faces come through. Like people were like, what? Nuh-uh. No. Okay, good. We can do this, guys. We should not be trying to get out of debt with a motivation of shame. Rachel, yes. Refocus your why from what you don't want to what excites you, what it gets you. Yes, not what you're running. It's kind of like this idea. If you're a coach who specializes in life transitions of any kind, whether it's career changes, somebody starting a business, separation, divorce, marriage, even, right? The one thing you really want to focus on is the changes we are making is not you running away from your old life. It is you running toward your new. Okay, that is so important to shift that energy. It is a much more sustainable motivation. Okay, shame is a short-term motivator. It's one of the reasons I get so sick and tired of seeing financial gurus use it, because they get initial change from somebody, but it is typically short-lived, and the damage that can actually come from that shame compounds for a very long time afterwards, and the person can actually feel worse about themselves, not better. Okay. That the shame around personal finance is a false narrative that is keeping them accomplishing their goals. Yes, thank you for succinctly saying what I was just trying to say. That shame is not a long-lasting motivator, freedom process. Your financial journey doesn't start and stop with debt freedom. There is more to it. That Snowball is not the only way to pay off debt. It can be customized to fit the individual emotional need. That shame should not be a motivator at all. Yes, thank you. So I would love, so a couple things in closing, please share any or all of the above things that you guys just shared with me, what your takeaways were, an actionable item, how you are feeling about this, and also sort of the message that your audience needs to hear in the Financial Coaches Unite Facebook group. And I would love to invite you guys. One thing that I think we could all do better, and I will try to lead by example in this way, is sharing our process of coaching our clients. What questions do we ask? What steps do we take them through? Because there is no doubt in my mind that there's probably elements of like, ooh, yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to start using that question, right? Or, ooh, I never thought about, doing it in that order, or, oh, that's a really great step I could take with my clients too. And I really think we can all learn from one another in that way. And so I invite you to share as much of that as possible going forward, not just with debt, but with other conversations you're having with clients as well. And keep in mind, since hopefully more of that will be shared in the group, it is okay if there is a part of that process that someone shares that you don't agree with. Okay. I am sure there are parts of my process today that you're like, I don't know if I would use that. That is okay. So you don't need to comment and tell the person that. Okay. The reason that might happen is because their ideal client is different from yours. Their ideal client needs something different than yours does. Okay. So that step may be a crucial part of their process, and you could just disregard it. Like you don't even need to have it. Okay. So keep that in mind. A coach needs a coach. Oh yeah, for sure. Yes, 100%. Okay, so please share in the group some of your takeaways. It also encourages people to join these calls. I want to thank you guys for being so open to my process today on how I coach clients to get out of debt. And I just want to close with this as we wrap up. I have come to realize that watching another human being become the best version of themselves is one of the most gratifying, amazing parts of life. And I genuinely, truly mean that. And as a coach, we not only get to be a witness to that for a living, like we get paid to witness that. Do you guys realize that? Like that is incredible. But we also can sometimes be the catalyst and the supporter and the cheerleader and the one person who gives them permission to unleash that part of themselves. And I do not believe a person can experience that transformation if the actions that they are taking come from a place of shame. It is not possible. So anything we can do to lead these conversations around money with appreciation, with forgiveness, and with acknowledgement of who they are, seeing them as just a whole person and coaching them from that place. I believe that's the role that we play. And that's one of the reasons I love financial coaching so much. So let's continue to do the work that we're doing. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you guys learned some amazing things, and I will see you in the Facebook group sometime. Thanks, everybody.